In this video, we're going to recreate this page to the left. So I have this blank one right here to recreate that. I do have margin set, which is a 0.25, and also down here is a 0.5. If you want to take a look at that, we're going to go to Layout, Margin, or Unchained, I should say, because the top and the inside and outside are all 0.25, and the bottom we want a little bit more room, so later on we can add a page number, and that's going to be a 0.5. The next step would be, what would be the easiest to do? I would say the green background, making a giant square rectangle. I'm not going to use the rectangle frame because when that has that little placeholder X, that means I'm going to bring in an image. It's just the shape that we're going to use, the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw out, so click and drag out, make a box. It doesn't have to be perfect. Right now I have no fill color, which I should do. And you also want to use that selection tool because that brings up the bounding box, and we just want to scale it and make sure it's just the exact size of your margin. We don't want to be way past the margin, we want to stay in the margin. And we know the margin is that magenta little box that we see inside, so I'm right on top. Now I've already have my colors selected for this green background. If you want to match that exactly, that is the CMYK value right here. So if I hover, it shows you the exact CMYK for that green. If you don't have access to put that in, you can go into your actual new color swatch, and we can go to a swatch library that's located in the color mode to the Pantone CMYK uncoded. And you would scroll down to find which color would work best for you. So I'm going to find a green that matches best. So for me, the Pantone 148-3, or just within that area, any of these is pretty close match to that one right there. You can even go a little darker if you like, but either one is a close match to visually what I've already created. Now once that's complete, the best thing to do is to lock, because we're going to have all of this other stuff on top and we don't have to deal with that. We don't want to. We don't want to interfere. So we're going to do a Command L, or just go to Object and Lock. The next thing you want to do is maybe let's talk about having these little circles. They could be any shape that you're going to start off with, but I am going to place images inside from Illustrator. So I'm going to use the rectangle or the ellipse. Actually, the ellipse would be the easiest one. So I'm going to draw out and hold down the Shift key to make a nice circular proportioned. So right there's that first one. And then you're going to go to the fill color, and I'm going to use white, which is the default paper. And while that's selected fill white, I'm going to properly insert my file from Illustrator. So I'm going to go to File and Place. We never do a copy and paste. For me to have that actual image using Illustrator, I know it's in here. So as we can see, all of these pigs, we just want the one right there. In order to just select that one, I'm going to go to Show Import Options. That needs to be checkmark. If you do not see these over here, that means that you have just that option button. You need to click on that option button, make sure that check mark is on that says Show Import Options. Very important. Then hit Open, and what you're going to see is a preview. What you see here is what you get. Make sure you have that checked here to see that preview. You need to go to Layers, and then at that point you're going to turn off what you don't want. I'm going to go through all of this and turn off. I only want the happy face head. As you can see, there's a little dash dotted box around there. That means that it's only going to select that. If that little dotted box is much larger than the actual image, that means you have something in that layer and it's going to contain all of that. So you might need to go back to your original Illustrator file and fix that. So now, like I said, what you see is what you get. Whatever is here in this preview is exactly what you will get. I don't mess with any of the settings. I leave it right to what it says here. And then I hit OK. Automatically the head is placed in there. I'm going to go to my selection tool. I'm going to click into the content grabber. As you can see, that's the image bounding box, I'm going to hold down the Shift and Command and just scale. If I want to scale from the center of the face, I'm going to hold down the Shift and Option key, which scales from the center. Now, if that's the size you like and you're happy with all of that setup wise with inside the frame, and you know you're going to repeat that with a different image from Illustrator. So the best to do is to use that as a template. I'm going to click and drag, hold down the Option key and duplicate, click it and drag it. So you're click and drag, you're holding down that mouse, hold down the Option key to get that double arrow, let go of the mouse, and there you have 3 of those. You just need to select that, go to File, Place, and pick your new image, which is now I'm going to a different Illustrator file because I want to have that face. Again, make sure Show Import Options is checked mark. Hit Open, and I'm going to go to Layers, turn off everything you do not want to be imported. And right there we know that's the only one that's going to be placed inside that circle. Hit OK. Now that switched out, again, I'm going to select this circle, as we call it, and we're going to go to File, Place. This is a new file, a new face. I make sure that's checked on. I hit Open. I turn off what I don't want to bring in. That's the only eye there. That's again showing in the preview. Whatever you see here is what you get. And now I have 3 different pigs in the same size in the same circle. That's exactly what you want. So I want to use the selection key, marquee, select all that. Make sure you're never moving when you see that hand. That moves the image inside there. So we want to move everything at once, and you have that little black arrow, so that allows you to move everything at once. Now the next thing I'm going to do is bring in another image. So you can always create using any of these frames and then or shape to bring something in and target it into that specific size. Or if you'd like, knowing what you don't know what the size is, or maybe you do, we're going to go to File. I haven't selected anything. I'm not even needing to at this point. File, Place, and I'm going to select this image right here. Again, I have Show Import Options on. I'm going to go to Layers, and I want the front pose. Now, when you don't have a frame to target the image to go inside to, it clips onto your mouse. So I haven't clicked anything. It's just my mouse. It's following my mouse. So now I'm going to click, and now it releases it, and now it's on that page. Now let me zoom in. Some people get confused because they don't think this is inside a frame. What happens is that I have the frame is the exact size of the image. If I want to scale the frame, as you can see, I can make it where I could cut off that little pig. I can even go to the Direct Select tool and change that shape of the frame. Now in order to do that, you need to make sure you select just that one anchor point. If they're all solidly filled, that means they're all selected and they'll all move at once. But I'm just going to click there. See how that's a hollowed out white anchor point, and this is a filled red. That means that's selected. And I can actually change it to any shape I want or distort that. I can also change the shape of the frame if I go to Object and go to Convert Shape, and you can pick any shape that you possibly want and it would actually show up in that size, which we don't need that. The image bounding box, if I click there, as you can see, lights up as a different color, and that bounding box for that image can be distorting the actual image, right? So if I drag that out, I'm distorting the pig. So you don't want to grab the wrong bounding box, and you'll know because then all of a sudden your image is distorted. So when you want to make something proportionally placed and it's not, you can always right click and go to Fit and say Fit Content Proportionally. That's always very important, or Fit Content to Frame. So you always want to fit content proportionally. That's usually the best option to do. Now we know that we're not having a colored frame background. We just have a transparent one. And I'm going to just move that right there and place it there for now. Alright, I made some resizing adjustments. So we've used, right, the circle was using the placement frame, which is the little placement X's there, and that's always good to use when you're placing an image inside. The green rectangle is just a regular shape, so I just used the regular rectangle and colored it green. So this right here has type on it, so we want to use a type tool and create a type box. So I'm going to click and drag out a nice size box. I know I have words already typed up, so I'm going to grab that. And within the type, you have that little blinking that allows you to start typing. I'm going to paste my words on there. Now for this box right here, I know that I like to select the actual type box. I go to the type tool, and that brings up the control panels for the type. I'm going to select the font for that, and that's going to be the Arial Narrow Bold, and we're actually going to have it size at 18. And the background, we're going to have a nice yellow. So I've already had that set in my swatch panel. So that's going to be the yellow swatch panel right here in these colors. And I'm also going to have the stroke, black stroke. And for me, I do want to have 2 points. So I did added a stroke to that, and see how I switch from the type tool, now I switch to the selection. That right here gives, you see the same color and stroke, but before I wasn't able to make that at a 2 point, which I do want. Now again, that's still selected. We know it's a type text box because it has that little O right there. And I'm going to go back to the type tool, and that font is really close to the edge. So how do we change that? We just basically make the baseline. We shift the baseline to a -8, and that brings it down right there. Now how do we make that not so close to each end here? Well, right here below the A in the control panel, the paragraph formatting, we're going to go to the Align Center. That's not too bad. It's pretty much where I want it to be at this point. You don't want to leave your text box to be really big. You want to size it to just look just right to what you need it to be. Now I'm following exactly, I'm supposed to recreate this one over here. So let me zoom out so we can get a better look. Now once you're done with that, I need to make that little shadow box that we see right there. So you have several options. For the first thing, one, you can just use your rectangle box and draw over the exact typeface box and change that to a black fill, no stroke, and then you would just shift it off to the side like that. Arrange that backward, not to the back, and then you could fix it a little bit so that we have just a little offset. And you want to group that together. Okay, we can select the two of these and we want to group that. And why is that? We want to make it kind of be like one, so every time I move it around it moves together. We're going to move on to this part down here. How do we create this little, so as you see, that is a text box that we actually filled in as yellow with a black stroke, and then we just have a regular box behind it, the black one. When we move on to this one, it's a little different. We actually have two different boxes. And what do I mean by that? So the first thing we're going to do is actually make that shape, that rounded rectangle with that little speak corner. You're going to go into the rectangle tool. You're going to draw out a rectangle. I'm going to change that to a white fill. Now that's a rounded corner. Might as well just change that to a black stroke as well. 2 points. That rounded corner is easily within the control panel. You go right here and you change it to rounded. That's also available in the object menu, and you go down to corner options and you can do the same thing. So this box is selected. I'm just going to click away so there's nothing selected. I'm going to default, say it's no fill with a black stroke. Then I'm going to go up here and make that into a white. It doesn't really matter because we're going to make a new shape. Pen tool, and we're going to make a closed path, a closed triangle. So I'm going to click and then I'm going to do another click, which makes that line, straight line, and then I'm going to do another one over here, and then I want to end where I started. See how it's going to close up? Now I have two shapes and I need to make that into one. Yes, you can group it, but see how that acts as one? We don't want to have to deal with two different shapes. Whatever you have two selected, we're going to go to Object, Pathfinder, and go to Add. So it's going to merge them together. This is exactly very similar to what we could do in Illustrator, but this is how we do it in InDesign. So now I'm going to make sure that's a 2-point weight on the stroke, and it's similar to the other one. I think I would redo it just to have a better look to it, but I'm going to leave it for now. The next step I need to do is, how do I get that typeface on top of it? Well, I definitely do not want to type on this, especially with a weird shape. So when you have to deal with weird shapes with different angles, that typing is going to be impossible. I'm going to go to the type tool, drag out, make a nice size box, and I've already copied those words that are right there, so I'm going to paste it, but you'll type it in. Now for this, I'm going to change the font. So I'm going to, from the selection tool, go to the type tool, which in the control panel allows me to have what I need. This is the last time we changed the paragraph, and we're going to change it to align center. Now we need to go into the A right here, which gives you all the control panels for the font. I'm going to select Comic Sans, so you can search it, which we'll do that, and we're going to do Comic Sans bold. Now the size is going to be 14, and I don't have to deal with that baseline like we did for this one over here, because we typed in that box and we didn't want to be near the edge. So here we just drag the box on top and size it to what we need it to be. Obviously my little top box needs to be a little bigger. So no problem. I can either redo it or use the direct select tool, make sure nothing's selected, and then I'm going to marquee over just on this side, so I can select just all of those anchor points, and then I'm going to click and drag out. I'm going to hold down the shift key just so it keeps it nice, and then I'm going to move the type box on top. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to see where I am. This one's a little smaller, mine's a little longer than the original one. You do it this way, you have the ability, or more the advantage, to not having to deal with, oh, I'm too close to the edge. You just basically have to make your shape and then you place this on top. And then I do group together because then I know that it's as one. So I'm going to group that together, which is Command G. And I do have over here, it's a drop shadow. So if you group something, it should default to the one at the bottom. So let's see if it'll do that for us. So it did. Sometimes some people have that drop shadow and they accidentally select the one box on top, right? So then you're thinking you're grouping it and then they do this. So if you see that, you just have to Command Z to undo and just make sure you're selecting the one object that you want to add the drop shadow to. Alright, so I fixed it to be more closer to the original one. So let's talk about how do we center things, or how do we know if it's at center. What I like to use, here's our rulers, I'd like to use the guides. I'm going to drag from the ruler, so here's one example, dragging down. That means I could line up. Now the reason why the guide doesn't show up on this page is because we're actually actively on this page. So if I just click over here, I could drag down and have the guides. If you have both pages light up here active, you have access to creating on both, so you can see if you have everything. Right now, right here, as you can see, I could zero and the size of the page. But what happens if I want to do the one in the middle here? So all I have to do is realign that ruler to read from that corner of the page. See how the 0 now starts here? And then I know half of this page is 4 1/4. When I select my group, this right here, the narrator box, this little squares lets me know it's the middle of that shape. If I click here and hold down the shift key to add to my selection of what I'm selecting, these three together, again, this little bounding box squares are going to tell me it's the center. So I'm I'm going to move that over. Once you feel like everything is in a good place, let's talk about the effect that we have here. So you can see the effect on this pig's faces. We have a drop shadow here. We're going to click right and activate the image, and we're going to go to the FX that's in the control panel. We're going to go to bevel and emboss, and automatically it's going to come up with this information. The only change I do want to make is the opacity percentage for the shadow, so I'm just going to change that to a 50%. I can dial it down, or I can just type in 50 and then hit OK. Now it's very important to understand that I selected the image inside the frame. If you just clicked on the frame and then do that bevel and emboss, what happens? As you can see, it's targeting the frame and not the image. So just keep in mind, you need to click on what you want to put the effect on. And if you make a mistake, you just Command Z undo. And again, we're going to change that shadow opacity to 50. And I'm going to click on the image on this one, go to the effects, bevel and emboss, and that concludes this tutorial.